Hello, everyone, and welcome to Nature and Science Podcast. I'm your host, Don Murphy. Today, we're going to be talking about my new novel, The Progenitor Field. What is that? Well, my co-executive producer, my daughter, Anna Paula Murphy, is here with us today to discuss this with me. She'll be asking me a few questions, and we'll just discuss in general what the novel is all about. We'll also let you know that you can go to theprogenitorfield.com. That's our official website for the novel, and you can read excerpts there and also learn how you can access the book, which will be out for publication on August 1st. Anna, it's good to have you on the program again.
I am so happy to be back. It's really cool to be here to discuss your novel. Um, so tell me a little bit about the process. I mean, you wrote a whole book that can take people years.
Well, the book is called The Progenitor Field, and it hasn't taken me that long to write it because I've been thinking about the whole notion of consciousness for some time. And so recently, it's been a plethora of discussion around, what happened before the Big Bang, something called the progenitor field that existed before the Big Bang. And really, um, not only is the novel about that, but the novel goes about establishing the premise that we live in a self-conscious universe. And so the novel really hinges on the fact that some crazy scientist, if you will, does an experiment that ends up plunging the whole universe into primordial darkness.
That's uh that's a pretty crazy story. That sounds really interesting. I mean, and well thought out, right? So you said you've been kind of thinking about this idea for a long time. How long is a long time?
Well, just about all my life, to tell you the truth. I mean, one of the interesting things is that as human beings, we can question. And so I went back to when I was 6 or 7 years old and I asked myself, well, why do I ask a question in the first place? And it seemed to me, as I thought about this starting from 8 years old, that that's what consciousness is all about. When you start asking questions and seeking answers, that's when the nature of consciousness really reveals itself. So you can say from 8 years old all the way up to this point where uh, there is just all of this literature in science, in philosophy, and religion trying to understand the nature of consciousness. So I've been thinking about this a long time. And then after reading Frederico Fagin's book, Irreducible, which basically establishes the idea of panpsychism, which says, we live in a conscious universe and that every entity in the universe has consciousness all the way down to the quantum level. So that really influenced my writing this book. So all of that kind of came together.
I mean, that's pretty complicated, right? So can you break that down even further into like the simplest of terms?
So the simplest of terms is that we live in a universe that is self-conscious, and that we as human beings, we are conscious because we're basically the universe itself reflecting upon itself or remembering itself. I mean, that's as simple as I can say it. Now, there are lots of theories about the nature of consciousness. I, Many of them, and the most scientific of them, of course, being that uh, consciousness is emergent from the biological processes of the brain. Neurons fire as we interact with the world around us, and consciousness emerges out of our interaction with the world through our brain activity, basically. And so my premise in the book is that no, consciousness is not emergent simply from our biological activity, but we, as part of the universe, are the expression of consciousness itself.
So is this what the main characters are trying to figure out? Are they trying to figure this out philosophically, or are they out, investigating this?
Well, you can say there's a trinity of characters in the book, and they're all three are born in a lightning storm, twins in Ethiopia, and then a young boy in Geneva, Switzerland, whose parents work for CERN. And they really represent the idea that they are connected, all three are connected to what I call the progenitor field in the book in in some way as a result of their birth and their genetics. They have a special connection that they express. So the twins express it through their intuitive and kind of spiritual connection, and then through nurture, the boy that's born in CERN expresses his connection more scientifically, and his natural connection to the progenitor field is kind of suppressed. So without giving away too much about the plot, that's basically these characters and their connection to the progenitor field. One of them goes on to conduct this experiment that I talked about that plunges the universe into primordial darkness. And you can read more about that if you go to the website again, the progenitorfield.com. There are excerpts there that start out with two sonnets, similar to what Shakespeare did in Romeo and Juliet, with sonnets that introduced basically the whole plot of Romeo and Juliet. So in my book, there are two sonnets that basically introduce the plot of the book with the progenitor field itself speaking and kind of laying out the theme of the book. And then the first two chapters are there that people will can get a sense of what the book is all about.
So it sounds like we have some pretty strong characters looking into a very interesting problem that kind of affects the whole of the universe, right? So it sounds like there's pretty big repercussions there for what they discover. So how do you keep track of all of these characters across writing this whole novel?
Well, if I do my job as an author and do get character development and know what the story is, then the characters that you create are in your head basically, and they begin to tell the story themselves. So a lot of times, especially in dialogue, characters will take over your mind as an author, and they will start writing the story and telling the story themselves. And that really helps keep track of the characters because they are alive in your head, and you know them almost personally. I dream about them.
Well, especially because you've been developing a story for such a long time, they would definitely be strong characters for you to almost be able to reference and be like, what would they do in a high stress situation or where the stakes are high? So there is that famous saying by Hemingway, the first draft is shit. Do you agree with Hemingway now that you finished the second draft?
Well, I hope by using that language, I don't have to put in the podcast that it's explicit, which you have to do sometime.
You can bleep me out.
Yeah, we can bleep you out or change it to crap or something. Who knows what, gets bleeped out these days. But yeah, I certainly agree with Hemingway. I mean, I think any author, worth their salt, and I hope I'm an author worth his salt, knows that you just get the first draft is getting the idea down on paper, getting the main story on paper. You got to get it out there, just even if it's extremely rough. And then you really have to go back and make the story real and alive in a second draft. And even a second draft, you know, still it's an iterative process. So you might end up doing several drafts before you're done.
Well, and also as you're writing, I imagine you're getting to know the characters better. So in the second draft, you might see something that would be like, that was out of character. we should change that. They should have this reaction. They're not as brave yet, or they're not as informed yet. Things like that. So when you're going through that second pass, it's almost like you're asking the characters, would you really do this in that situation?
Yeah, and you also ask the question, are the characters really contributing to the overall arc of the story? And in when I did the second draft of this story, talking about writing and the craft, is that one of the characters really became redundant. So I found that there were two characters that were carrying the same message of the story. And so halfway through the story, I basically kill off one of the characters, and then the other character picks up and really becomes the main protagonist in the story. So his life uh, gradually changes and he becomes the protagonist in the story. So instead of having dual type protagonists telling the same part of the story, I had to eliminate one, and that's just one example of what you have to do. Sometimes you have to kill off a character.
So did you mourn his death? Were you sad about it?
I didn't like personally mourn his death, but he comes back to haunt me sometimes.
So let's get back to the theme of this book for a minute here. So the theme is the exploration of the nature of consciousness. It's all about where does consciousness come from. Consciousness, I think, is something we take for granted. It's more of a, oh, well, I'm conscious. I think, therefore I am. Like it's super easy. Um, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. So you introduce the progenitor field as something that existed before the Big Bang. And you use this analogy, which is with stem cells, right? So totipotent and pluripotent stem cells. So what exactly does that mean?
Yeah, so in biology, there exists in an embryo, a glob of cells, but the main orchestrator of the embryo that makes everything happen, that says, this is life being created, is the totipotent stem cell. And it has the ability to become any organ or tissue in the body. But there's a hierarchy. There are totipotent stem cells, which I just mentioned, and then there are pluripotent, which is the next level, which also can become any tissue or cell in the body other than the placenta. Only the totipotent stem cell has that ability. And the totipotent stem cell is analogous to the progenitor field in the sense that it exists prior to all life and it's comes into existence with what I call in the novel original potential. And so, in the same way that a totipotent stem cell has the ability to create the entire human body from almost nothing, the progenitor field that I talk about in the same way existed before the Big Bang and had this pent-up potential that ended up manifesting itself as the Big Bang and then creating the 17 known fields of the standard model of physics. And then these fields interact with each other to create the life that we see. And of course, we're totally familiar with these fields, especially the electromagnetic field that, powers our phones and the electricity in our houses. Its force is carried by a photon. So, yeah, there's this hierarchy here. It's almost like a fractal. So you have the progenitor field having the potential to create all the fields that make life in the universe possible, including on a biological level. Then on that biological level, you have the totipotent stem cell, which makes us human life possible. And then we, as human life that are possible, we are reflections of that original progenitor field, which is the universe itself. So it's like you said, I think, therefore I am, or you go back to the philosophical sense, the very fact that we exist means that the universe is conscious because we express that consciousness.
So your main characters, they know about this field and it's everywhere. It's us and it's like you said, kind of multi-layered.
Mhm.
So as your characters are looking into this field, you said that they had, I think, an ability to interact with it. Is that right?
Yes.
And so what makes that possible in this world you've created?
So the characters in that sense represent the fact that all of us as human beings are connected to what the book is about, the progenitor field. And some of us have a greater capacity to express that connection. And so in the book, I call it the induced progenitor field. That's their characteristic. Just like in biology, you can have what's called an induced pluripotent stem cell, where you can take a stem cell from your skin because your skin is made up primarily of stem cells that are replicate. That's why your skin can renew constantly. So you can take a skin cell and biochemically you can induce it to become a pluripotent stem cell, which can then become any cell in the body and has this connection original connection to the totipotent stem cell. So in the same way, the book argues in a fictional sense, of course, that there are these human beings that have this induced ability to connect strongly with the original progenitor field. So they have a heightened conscious awareness of their, connection to the universe. Whereas most people don't, while they have the potential to be that way, they're not born with this strong, very, very strong connection that these main characters end up having.
That is interesting. So that'll be something that they would have had as kids and
Yes,
would have had kind of a sense of, which would probably affect how they, go through their character development. So
absolutely.
that is a great recommendation for those characters. So when can we expect the serialization to start on, what was it, Substack?
Yeah, so if you're on Substack, the serialization of the novel has already begun. It'll drop every Tuesday. But more than that, and what's a lot easier is you can go simply to the progenitorfield.com, which is produced by our publisher, which is Symmetry Breaking Media, and you can access the serialization directly and learn all about the novel there. And then you can also subscribe, and then you will get information about when the book drops. You'll get a discount on the book when it drops or when it's published, August 1st, if you subscribe. And so that's really the easiest way to access both information and the serialization of the prologue and the first two chapters of the book, which are already available.
Well, that is great. So there you have it, guys. We've got the Progenitor Field. It is coming out on August 1st, and it certainly doesn't sound like any science fiction novel that I have read yet, so I will definitely be giving it a full read before it comes out and get my sneak peek.
Right. And one of the keys to the book, I said it, the earth gets, or the universe gets plunged into universal or primordial darkness. And that's a major theme in the book, too. We treat darkness very different than you think of darkness. And if you ever have read Rilke, the poet, the famous poet, he has a famous poem that talks about darkness and what it means, and we explore that in the novel as well. So darkness, you'll find out, is not what you think it is.
All right, well, I'm definitely going to have to give this a read. It sounds like it's going to be very exciting and have great character development as well as some broader themes that are definitely worth considering.
Thanks, Anna, and thanks for listening.